Riverton residents are fed up with high crime rates. Representative Harriet Hageman wants to change the narrative regarding care for transgender people, and at Cheyenne Frontier Days, fair food doesn't necessarily come at fair prices. Bringing you these stories and more from Wyoming's largest news organization, I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily. Riverton for years has led Wyoming in crime rates, especially violent crime per capita. It outstrips other towns like Gillette, Cheyenne, and Rock Springs. Acts of public drunkenness, indecent exposure, vandalism, and violence have been common in the city of 11,000 people for years, but the locals say perpetrators are getting more brazen. And according to Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland, their crimes are growing more serious.
Some in town formed a group called Step Up Riverton, where their business owners and people are banding together, sharing security footage, tracking groups of people on the move who are intoxicated, and they often have nuggets that they can give over to police in case of investigations.
Group members are planning a fundraising banquet in October to provide bonuses or stipends for Riverton Police Department officers whom residents say are overworked and underpaid. As much as it's reported that the world is going through a transition away from fossil fuels to wind and solar energy, the data doesn't support it. Cowboy State Daily's Kevin Kelo reports that while the use of coal in European countries and the United States has declined, those reductions are offset by increases in Asian countries, primarily India and China.
Contrary to what people think, that the world is transitioning away from fossil fuels, as a matter of fact, we're seeing record high coal consumption. But China and India have ramped up their coal consumption so much that it's offset all of those declines. And so the total amount that we're consuming today is actually higher by a little over 3% than it was the year before.
According to the International Energy Agency, China and India consume twice as much as the rest of the world combined. Wyoming's lone U.S. House representative wants to reframe the language around transgender-related treatments for kids. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland said during a congressional hearing on gender change treatments for minors, cross-sex participation in sports, and related issues, Representative Harriet Hageman compared transgender-related treatments for kids to lobotomies.
She took issue with the term gender-affirming care, saying she would like instead to recharacterize transgender-related procedures, especially for kids, as sexual lobotomies, that treatments that change a child's exterior sexual appearance will soon be outdated.
On the other side of the argument, Democrats strongly resisted this narrative, saying that transgender-related treatments for some kids are life-saving. The price of food at this year's Cheyenne Frontier Days has caught the attention of some fairgoers this year as exorbitant. $20 for a turkey leg, $12 for a hot dog. Fair food, as Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson discovered, doesn't necessarily mean fair prices.
So I talked to a number of people who were at Frontier Days on Thursday afternoon. Some of them, like Nick and Courtney Long, who grew up in Cheyenne, felt like the prices were a little steep. And then I also talked to two gentlemen from Fort Collins, Colorado, who said that whenever they go to events, whether it's a concert or a fair or a rodeo in this case, they expect to get a little ripped off on their food prices.
Nate Janicek, the food vendor for Cheyenne Frontier Days, says they've actually kept their prices steady for the past few years, despite inflation cutting into his profit margins. And Rock Springs city officials recently threw a wet blanket over plans to hold a ladies' night out featuring male dancers at Porky's Bar. Ladies out drinking, watching male dancers, and potentially making bad decisions don't necessarily violate any of the city's rules. Cowboy State Daily's John Thompson says the reason the city poo-pooed the party has more to do with where the event was planned, not what was planned.
So they have 3 topless bars in Rock Springs that are in an area that's zoned for sexually oriented businesses. And then they have an ordinance requiring those same types of businesses to be licensed through the city as well. And he had neither of those things.
The owner of the bar, Porky Jones, said he wasn't too concerned about canceling the event, saying he knew it wouldn't be a big moneymaker, but wanted to, quote, let the girls have a little fun on a Monday night. And that's today's news. You can read about all of these stories and more on CowboyStateDaily.com, Wyoming's largest and most read news source. Sign up today for our free daily newsletter and get unlimited access to unrivaled coverage of what's going on in the Cowboy State. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.